So my name is Mary Richardson, and I am going to talk to you today about vaping. Vaping is a term that is used when someone is using an electronic cigarette. You may also hear electronic cigarettes called vape pens. You might hear them called e-cig or a mod or a pod. But vaping is the term that we use. Electronic cigarettes they're devices that operate by heating a liquid solution to a high enough temperature so that it produces what we would call an aerosol that is inhaled. Today's topics are what's in that vape, taking a page out of tobacco's playbook, the epidemic, addiction, and what can you do about it. The learning objectives for today, I want you to be able to describe vapes and their ingredients, or some of their ingredients, analyze vape advertising, or to get you to think about advertising, describe vape use in our community. We're actually going to talk more about national figures than local figures, discuss addiction, and list places to ask for help. To start, let's take a look at what these things are and what all's in them. Here you can see there are a lot of different types of vapes. They come in different sizes and different shapes. Knowing that, we can probably figure that they are made of different parts and materials, and that they probably have different ingredients in the actual vapor itself. E-cigarettes or vapes, you might also know them, somebody might call them an e-cig or a Juul. You might even hear somebody call it a puff bar. These are known in the professional sector as electronic nicotine delivery systems, or ENDS. They are the newest form of tobacco products. So tobacco products include things like cigarettes, cigars, pipes, chew, dip, snuff, snus. It also includes hookah smoking. These devices, though, the electronic cigarettes or the vapes, they are devices used to smoke or vape chemical substances. The most common active component or ingredient in vapes is nicotine, which is the addicting piece. They can also be used with things like THC, which is the compound in marijuana that gets you high, and CBD, another compound derived from marijuana that does not get you high, but it does have other side effects. Since these products are so new, having only been commercially available in the United States since about the 2000s, they're mostly untested and unregulated. What studies have been done, they show a wide array of dangerous ingredients, including lead that comes from the physical vape, the battery, and the coil that helps heat it up to make that vapor. They've also been known to have formaldehyde in it, and formaldehyde, if you were to look up formaldehyde, some of you may know what it is, but it's used in a lot of different things, but it does pose significant danger to human health. It's known to be what we call a human carcinogen, which basically causes cancer. So we see similar ingredients in these products that we have seen in other tobacco products. Those chemicals that make the product more addicting and more dangerous. While these companies claim, so the companies that make these, they claim their products are quit smoking aids, at least that's how they were marketing them. They claim that they're specifically to help adult smokers quit or adult tobacco users quit. We know that they're actually engineered to attract young people. They come in, after all, they do come in flavors like bubblegum, cucumber, PB&J. I just saw another one maybe yesterday or the day before that comes in a flavor called OMG, which is, I believe it said it was orange, mango, and guava flavored. So those aren't designed to be attracting adults. They're designed to be attracting young people. But they're also designed to look different from a regular cigarette that adults smoke. Here's a diagram of a basic e-cigarette. You can see there are different parts to it, but they're pretty universal. So you have things like the cartridge, that's the part that holds the e-liquid or the substance. It can come pre-filled or refillable. It is usually combined with the atomizer. So the atomizer is actually the coil that is a heating element, so it helps convert the e-liquid to tiny airborne droplets or an aerosol. Then you have the sensors, and you also have the battery. Sometimes there are LED lights at the end, but as we saw on the last slide, there are tons of different types of e-cigarettes, but regardless of what someone's using, they have the product itself, the e-cig or the mod or Juul, and you have the vape juice that goes inside that is actually what's inhaled or exhaled, or inhaled and exhaled when it gets changed from the liquid to the aerosol. So, what's in that vape juice? You've probably heard some of these interesting responses that I've heard. I've heard it's just harmless water vapor, or there's only 5 ingredients. It has way fewer chemicals than regular cigarettes, and you may have heard that it's totally safe. All of these are actually false. They are lies that are told to us through effective advertising. We will talk about advertising later in this presentation. In reality, there are tons of chemicals in these things, including nicotine, volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, ultrafine particles, and chemicals that we know are dangerous, particularly even dangerous to humans. Not only do these have a lot of potentially scary ingredients, they aren't really regulated, so they don't have to list everything on their packaging, so their ingredients aren't always listed. You might not know what you're actually putting into your body. When it says things like only 5 ingredients or it's only water vapor, they're actually saying that because it sounds good. It's very similar to when you hear somebody say, well, it's organic or it's natural. It's all marketing and it works really well. So we need to actually educate ourselves so we don't fall for these tricks. So here is a list. These are just some of the chemicals that have been found in vape juice. Several of these chemicals I am not even able to pronounce. So let's talk a little bit about nicotine. Nicotine is the addictive chemical that's found in tobacco and vapes. Remember, tobacco products are things like cigarettes, cigars, pipes, chew, dip, snuff, snus. It is naturally occurring in some vegetables like potatoes. But here's a fun fact. Potatoes, yes, they do have nicotine in them, but to give you an idea of how much, nicotine would be equal to the same amount in one cigarette. It's actually 2 garbage truck fulls. So that's quite a lot of potatoes. Nicotine, we worry about nicotine because it can negatively affect brain development. Brains are not actually fully developed or done growing until we're in our mid-20s. The last part to develop is the front part, the frontal lobe, which is the part that helps with making decisions. Nicotine also teaches you how to be addicted to things. So it basically creates these roadmaps in your head that show different chemicals how to get to the pleasure part of the brain and release something called dopamine. You can also release these happy neurotransmitters inside your body by doing things like exercise. You may have heard of releases what we call endorphins. Very similar. It makes you feel better. So it turns out that most people who use a product like Juul don't know that it always contains nicotine. So a survey was done, 63% of Juul users don't know that the product they're using always contains nicotine. The companies that sell these should have to tell us exactly what they are selling to us, And there should not be this many people, that's over half the people using these, don't realize what they're putting into their bodies. You might think that there are nicotine-free options out there, so someone can get access to a vape with no nicotine if they wanted to. However, unfortunately, when put to the test, most of those vapes that are sold on the market as nicotine-free actually aren't. So here is a study that was done in Australia, and it was just done last year, so about a little over a year ago. And this study was actually done, and it showed that 60% of tested nicotine-free vapes still contain nicotine. Why do you think that is? The answer is that these products need to contain nicotine to sell well and make a good amount of money. People don't just vape for fun. They may start to vape because other people are vaping, but then they get addicted to them. So this slide actually shows you different types of electronic cigarettes. So we have something called, we have Juul, we have Fix, and then we have Suron. So nicotine is found in all of these products on this slide. To give you an idea, we're going to use regular cigarettes as a comparison. So regular cigarettes have, a pack of cigarettes has 20 cigarettes, and 20 cigarettes is equal to or about 20 milligrams of nicotine. So that's about 1 milligram per cigarette. So again, it'd be about 20 milligrams for the whole pack that would be absorbed into your body. Now, when you look at Juul, we have 1 Juul pod is about the same as 41.3 milligrams of nicotine. That's about 41 cigarettes, so it's over 2 packs of cigarettes. Our concern is that young people are being introduced to a high amount of nicotine, developing a tolerance quickly, and then becoming addicted as a result. So let's talk about the Fix pod. The Fix pod has 75 milligrams of nicotine. That's equivalent to 75 cigarettes. How many packs would that be? If you do the quick math, that's almost 4 packs, right? It's a little bit under 4 packs of cigarettes. And then if we look at Suron pod, it's even higher. So it's 90 milligrams of nicotine. So again, that's about 90 cigarettes, which is about 4.5 packs. No matter what type of pod device used, all of them contain high levels of nicotine, which is extremely addictive. So our biggest concern with pod-based e-cigarettes among young people is that they can deliver the same amount of nicotine released from 1.5 to 2 packs of cigarettes. All salt-based e-juice or liquid contains nicotine. So older generations of electronic cigarettes or e-cigarettes used a form of nicotine called free-based nicotine. That's like the picture on the right. You see this one, it has 25 milligrams of nicotine. It's a refillable tank. The one on the left, the most recent generation of e-cigarettes on the market, they include a pre-filled pod system like Juul and refillable systems like that Suron drop we had already discussed, and something called candy pens. They use nicotine salts in the e-liquids. So the nicotine salt formulas, they're actually to allow for much higher levels and efficient delivery of the nicotine with less irritation compared to the earlier generations of electronic cigarettes. So this prompts a lot of questions and concerns, obviously about the use of these items, the purpose, and actually the safety, especially with the high amounts of nicotine. While using an electronic cigarette is often called vaping, the device produces an aerosol, not a vapor. Unlike vapor, which is simply a substance in the gas form, the aerosol from the e-cigarette contains tiny particles from both a liquid solution and the device, which could be metals from that heating coil. There's evidence to suggest these particles can lead to cardiovascular, which is your heart, cardiovascular injury with links to negative effects on resting heart rate. So your resting heart rate when you're sitting there and your heart's just beating, blood pressure, and cells that line the blood vessels. All right, now that we've talked about the products themselves, or I've talked to you about the products themselves, let's take a look at how these companies are marketing to you. If you were to look up the definition of marketing, the definition of marketing on Wikipedia, for example, says that marketing is the study and management of exchange relationships. It is the business process of identifying, anticipating, and satisfying customer needs and wants. Because marketing is used to attract customers, it is one of the primary components of business management and commerce. So let's take a look at some of the ads that Big Tobacco or tobacco uses. So if you were to look at the way electronic cigarettes advertise, a lot of their ads directly mirror those once put out by big tobacco companies. So when you look at these two particular ads, they use women in these ads. And the one on the left is actually from, if you were to look at the date down on the bottom right of that ad on the left, this ad is actually from the 1930s. Now, tobacco has been around, cigarettes have been around since at least the 1800s or so. And if you were to look back and do some research on the history, it was actually frowned upon when women were seen in public smoking. So Big Tobacco was looking to increase their consumers or who's buying their products, so they started using women to advertise, just like on this ad on the left. So they wanted to thank you for your patronage, Miss America, and then you see the one on the right, and it's very similar. It talks about being fashionable, stepping out into style by using these products. Even when you look at the wording, electronic cigarette companies are using some of the same types of wording. On these two ads, it's talking about satisfaction, man-sized satisfaction, clean, smooth, and fresh. And then the other one, the electronic cigarette, it's for all of us smokers wanting satisfaction. This is what it looks like. In this particular ad, the idea of don't quit, switch, it wasn't invented by e-cigarettes. So the one on the right is from an electronic cigarette, and it just says, why quit, switch. But that's not something that was just created. As you can see on the ad on the left, the ad, it says, with all the talk about smoking, I decided I'd either quit or smoke true. And he decides, or the ad says, he smokes true. So you can't really read it here on the ad on the right, but down towards or right above where it says visit bluecigs.com, can't read it because it's blurry, but it does say nobody likes a quitter. It's actually almost shaming people who want to quit smoking. So when you look at these ads, there's 4 on here. What audience do you think this ad is targeting? How does the woman on the left top, how does this woman in the ad have a youthful appearance? So she's got a ponytail. She has, you can't really tell, but it's a Letterman's jacket. And just looking at the position of her body. So look at the other ads as well. Their position, the way they're dressed, or items they have that they're using, like the gentleman with the comb in his hair. So all of these particular ads, they were reviewed and they were found to be geared specifically toward young people, and Juul was told they couldn't use them anymore. These companies are trying to get you to buy their products, get you addicted, and give them your money. This this picture here is, as you can see, it says Smoketastic Scholarship Program. Some vape companies have actually begun offering scholarships for 18-year-olds. And 18-year-olds, as you may know now, they're not legally allowed to vape anymore because of the Tobacco 21 law that was passed. The applications for these scholarship programs ask questions like, or asks them to discuss things like the benefits of vaping and whether vaping addiction is a concern. There's tons of other questions that are asked on there as well. This marketing tactic that is being used to introduce vaping to young people. So it's another marketing tactic that's being used. All right, so these companies, these brands, they also sponsor things like music festivals, which tobacco used to do, but they're not allowed to anymore because it was considered an unethical way to market to young people. They still do this type of marketing, but in other countries. There's a poster here from the Indonesia Festival sponsored by Big Tobacco. These are just some of the ways how e-cigarettes are marketing to young people, just like Big Tobacco used to, and they still do in other countries. So, think about where you've seen some of these ads for electronic cigarettes. A lot of times you see them on social media platforms. You may also see them on things like YouTube. Maybe it's a commercial. Or think about like these any kind of Snapchat videos or TikTok videos where you see somebody using these products. Sometimes, depending on who that person is with that account, sometimes tobacco companies do pay people to be promoting their product. You may not see that background stuff going on, but that does happen that way, where you get somebody who has a lot of followers, and then they're used to target or advertise. Just think about any time you're looking at YouTube, if you follow certain people on YouTube. There's a gentleman I follow, but he does advertise in his video for different types of products. Now, advertising with tobacco, it's bad, but you also have to think about it on a wider scale. Think about any kind of ad that you see. So I'm going to use when I was a kid. I remember this vividly, and it's a little bit different now, but when I was a kid, we'd go to the grocery store and we would see ads. They weren't even ads, they were when you would go to the store. So when I'd go to the store as a kid, I remember going through the breakfast aisle or the cereal aisle. And as a family, when we would go, when you got to pick out the breakfast cereal, you would actually look for the box or the cereal that actually had a toy in it. That's how cereal companies or breakfast food companies, they used to market to kids that way. I mean, when you were going through the grocery aisle and there was a box and there was a toy inside, you wanted that toy. Sometimes, though, we got tricked, and it would say you could get a toy, but you actually had to read the box because the box sometimes didn't have the toy, but you had to actually fill out a form and mail it back to get your toy. So that was just one way outside of the tobacco world or the tobacco piece that companies do market. Just thinking about kids. Kids are the ones that buy those sugary cereals or want those sugary cereals, and they look for those when they go to the store. But it was a double bonus when you got a toy in there. But there are tons of ways that we get advertised to that sometimes we don't even realize that we're getting marketed to. All right, now that we've discussed a little bit about marketing, we could go on and on about marketing. and the tactics being used, we're going to take a look at how many people are actually vaping. All right, so when you look at this slide, this is the National Youth Tobacco Survey, so it's done in the United States, and this is most recently done in 2019. When you look at the blue lines on this graph, the blue lines, the dark blue and the light blue, that is actual current middle school and high school cigarette use, so regular cigarettes. You can see those blue lines over time continue to go down each year, or at least kind of leveling off. The high school smoking rate, about 5.8% of current cigarette use, and then you have 2.3% middle school. Now, if you were to look up adults smoking rates are going to be very similar. And I'll kind of explain that in a little bit. But the red line and the yellow line, that actually has to do with electronic cigarette usage. So as you can see, since about 2011, so when this graph starts, you see there's an increase in electronic cigarette use between middle school and high school. So if we kind of go back, and I'm going to use adults as an example. So I had explained earlier that regular cigarettes have been around since probably at least the 1800s. And a lot of adults were being marketed to and advertised to that it was okay to smoke and that it actually helped you. Well, we know that that's a lie. So back in the 1950s and 1960s, if you were to look up the smoking rate in the United States, you would find about 44%, so almost half, the percentage of people who smoked in the United States, so adults who smoked, was about 44% back in like the 50s and 1950s and 60s. Now something happened in the 60s that really changed a lot of things. So as far as the smoking rate, so the regular smoking rate, we see that it's going down in youth, but it's also going down and it's continuing to go down for adults. So when you think about it, back in the 1960s, there was something that really happened that helped the smoking rate go down. In about 1964, the Surgeon General came out with a report that said, hey, smoking is harmful to your health. And after that first report came out, the smoking rate started to go down. So more people were finding ways to quit smoking. Less people started smoking because, you know, it was bad for your health. So it didn't go down quickly, and it did not certainly go down overnight. It took decades and decades to really help people quit because they were addicted to these things. They talked to young people about not starting to smoke because it was harmful for their health. So the regular smoking rate had gone down. There were a lot of other things that happened to help make that rate go down, and it is continuing to go down. So the adult population for the United States for smoking regular cigarettes is at about 14%. So obviously Ohio is a little bit different. Unfortunately, we're a little bit higher. We're trying to get that number down by helping people quit and giving them the right resources to use. And the same thing for youth. But it's been a long road, and there are a lot of other things, like I said, that happened. It wasn't just the Surgeon General's report, but we also had back in 1998 something called the Master Settlement Agreement. And the Master Settlement Agreement really changed things as far as marketing by regular tobacco product companies. So like your regular cigarettes and things like that. So back in 1998, the Master Settlement Agreement, it was a lawsuit that was filed by a bunch of states, including the state of Ohio. And they filed lawsuits against tobacco companies that said, hey, you're causing healthcare problems in our state. And the settlement was, there were a bunch of things in the settlement, but one of those pieces was that they weren't allowed to advertise to youth. Now, fast forward after this settlement happened, electronic cigarettes were not really a thing. So they were not included in that master settlement agreement. So that's why now we're trying to talk to you about electronic cigarettes, because those didn't exist, or they weren't really heard of back in 1998 when this master settlement agreement happened. I think I've mentioned before in this presentation that electronic cigarettes really didn't become a thing, and they weren't really commercially available in the United States until about the 2000 time frame. So the year 2000, or a little like in that decade, 2000 to 2010. So again, going back, if you think about the health consequences for regular cigarettes, we know that they're bad. The first Surgeon General's report came out back in the 60s. But regular cigarettes had been around since at least the 1800s. So it took many, many years to figure out the long-term effects of regular cigarette smoking. Now, we're already finding out that electronic cigarette usage is causing problems, health problems. But a lot is unknown because they are so new, and we haven't had that long to study them like regular cigarettes. So back in 2019, so just a year ago, more than 5 million youth were currently using electronic cigarettes. The year before, it was only 3.6 million. So now let's talk a little bit about addiction. So what does it mean to have an addiction? When you have an addiction, you need a substance to feel normal, or a thing to feel normal. Without it, you go through what we call withdrawal. It's always on your mind, and it feels like sometimes you have somebody on your back weighing you down, or you might hear the term, you have a monkey on your back. Addiction forces you to surrender control to a substance or a thing. This thing you are addicted to decides how you spend your money, how you spend your time, and sometimes even who you spend your time with. So people can become addicted to a lot of different things. It could be things like drugs, alcohol, video games, gambling. It could be eating. It could be working. Nicotine in particular, as we discussed about earlier, it's highly addictive, and vapes are designed to get you what we would call the biggest bang or the most bang for your buck in relation to the nicotine. One hit from Juul is designed to give you the amount of nicotine that you would get from one cigarette. So addiction makes rational thoughts go out the window. You might do things to fuel your addiction that you wouldn't expect from yourself, like continuing to vape if you got in trouble, or if you were grounded, or you got your phone or your electronic device or even a PlayStation. If you got that taken away from you, but you continued to do it maybe when you weren't supposed to. In general, addiction isn't fun, and it can make your life harder. So let's do some math. Let's take a look at how much money you can actually use. A lot of us, think about money. And I want you to see just how much somebody would spend. So a disposable electronic cigarette costs around $6.95 each. So if you used one per day, you would spend $6.95. If you smoked one a day for one whole month, you would spend $6.95 times 31 days. That's if we estimate 31 days in a month. I know some months are shorter. So we would take the $6.95 and multiply it by 31, which will give you $215 $2,000.45. So a lot of you may be to the age where you have your driver's license, and maybe you have a car payment. I know when I was in high school, my first car, I had a car payment, and that car payment cost me in high school, which was quite some time ago, it cost me about I think my first car payment was, it was an older car used, it was around $125 a month. Most recently as an adult, I believe we just had a car payment around $250 a month. So quite a difference from when I first got my license to now. But you would spend, if you used one electronic cigarette every day for one whole month, you would spend $215.45. If you use one per day for one whole year, we're going to take that $6.95 and multiply it by 365 days, which is going to give you $2,536.75 for one whole year. Now, when I usually talk about the money, and we come across individuals who smoke or you have used tobacco products, they actually get addicted and they use these products for a long period of time, sometimes even up to 30 years. So if you wanted to do the math on your own and see how much somebody would spend over a 30-year period, you would take that 1 year and multiply it by, 20, 30 years. It's going to give you quite a large amount. Now, let's compare these numbers on what you would spend to what you make if you do have a job. So some of you may have part-time jobs while you're working or while you're in school. And you may, if you are making minimum wage, some of you may be making more than minimum wage, but minimum wage right now is $8.70 an hour. So let's say that you are working part-time. When I was in high school, I worked part-time, and I worked about 15 hours per week. So if you're working about 15 hours per week, then before taxes, you're getting about $130.50 per week. That is before taxes are taken out. Now, if you work 15 hours a week for one whole month, you're going to make around $522 a month. That is again before taxes are taken out. And then at the end of the year, if you're working your 15 hours per week, even through the summer, you're going to be making the $8.70 an hour times, your 15 or times your month, which is $522. So you take your $522 a month and multiply it by 12. Then you're going to come up with, in 1 year, you will make $6,264. Again, this is before taxes are taken out. So taxes, if you haven't really talked about taxes, taxes, when you work, you're going to get taxes taken out of your paycheck. You're going to have a federal tax come out, and you're also going to have a state tax come out, and a local tax. And some of us, some depending on the school districts that you live in, you might actually also be paying a school tax off of what you're making. That's what we call an income tax. So if you look at how much you are making before taxes are taken out compared to what you would be spending, you're spending over 1/3 of your income just on using tobacco products. And what I'd like to explain to you is when you use something like tobacco products, after you use that product, it's gone. So you don't get anything what I would call tangible. You don't have anything to hold in your hand. It's not like if you go out and you buy a new phone. You have that phone that you can make calls with, you can text, or you can play games with, or look at social media. But with a cigarette or an electronic cigarette or a tobacco, there's nothing that you get. Once you use it, it's gone. So that's quite a bit of money that somebody would spend on using those tobacco products. So youth who vape are actually more likely to smoke cigarettes, use alcohol, use marijuana, or other illicit drugs. And vapes can be used in other drug use. So 14% of high school seniors in 2009 admitted to vaping marijuana in the past month. And they may also use them with synthetic drugs. So what can we do about this issue? Well, I told you before that tobacco use, more specifically cigarette use among youth, it has been on the decline for decades. However, now we're seeing e-cigarette and vape use among middle school and high school students. It's been on the rise. The popularity of e-cigarettes and vapes among youth is of concern for health professionals, educators, and even parents, in part because of the common misperception or the misconception that these products are harmless, and also because their long-term consequences or those long-term health effects of e-cigarettes or vape use, it's still not known. I had explained earlier that regular cigarettes have been around for a long time. Just thinking about that ad that I showed you from the 1930s. They've been around for a long time, so they've had a long time to study those long-term effects. So just make sure that you educate yourself, look for that trusted information, and we'll talk in a couple of slides where you can get some trusted information. So as I stated on the last slide, make sure you know the facts. Use the information that I've talked to you about today to make the right decision for yourself. Sometimes individuals start using tobacco, whether it's a vape pen or regular tobacco, like cigarettes, cigars, chew dip, snuffs, even hookah smoking. Sometimes folks or individuals use that because maybe a close friend does, and unfortunately sometimes it's because our close relatives do. But know the facts. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask your teachers. Ask your parents. Use good websites like CDC and the Surgeon General. You can also go to the Truth Campaign. They do a lot of stuff on tobacco use. They've been around for a long time. When tobacco use and the Master Settlement Agreement back in the 90s came about. Don't believe everything you hear. These vape companies, they tell you it's safe because they want you as their customer. After all, you are the next generation. You're the next generation of their customers, so they need and they want you as their customers, and sometimes they will stretch the truth so that they get you as their customer. If you need help, if you use these products and you want to quit because you know maybe that they are bad for you, but it's really difficult to quit because of that nicotine, ask for help. There's actually a free texting-based support system for teens, so if you're under the age of 18, you can utilize this. If you go to their website, mylifemyquit.com, they have a lot of good resources there, but I will give you a phone number or a texting number on the next slide. This text-based support, it's actually completely confidential. Now, your friends sometimes, and this may not just apply for any like vaping, but sometimes it feels like you're the odd one out. Maybe your friends are vaping, but you want to quit. What can you do? Start a conversation with them. Talk to them about your decision and why you are quitting. Maybe one of them could quit with you, or maybe one of them wants to quit too, but they're afraid of being the odd one out as well. Share information and resources with them. Ask them to support you through the process. Real friends will support you. Sometimes this also can happen when significant others use tobacco products. Even with adults, we tell adults, if you're going to quit, make sure you have a good support system. It's going to be hard for you to be around someone if they're not able to support you. or it's going to be hard to get through that process if you don't have that support. Now, let's think about it a little bit different. So let's pretend, or let's think about it like basketball. I played basketball in high school and a little bit in college, but if you decided you wanted to go out for the basketball team, your friends hopefully would be supportive because they care about you and they want you to be happy. Even if they don't like basketball, or even if they don't care about sports. The same thing goes for quitting basketball. Let's say that your friends are on the team, and maybe you decide that you're not going to be on the team anymore. I think that your friends would support you. So people who make fun of you for protecting your health are being selfish and reacting to a feeling of judgment. If you're using these products and you want help, you can access help right away. These 3 things listed here are ways that you can get help. We have the Licking County Health Department. That's actually where I work. We have a phone number. It's 866-525-2132. Licking Memorial Health Systems also has a program to help folks quit or individuals quit smoking or using tobacco products. Their phone number is 220-564-7848. But the other one, the first one that's listed here, the My Life, My Quit, that's actually one that's geared specifically for teens. It's designed for teens. So the number that's listed there, the 855-891-9989, that is actually for texting. You can also visit the website link listed here. It's mylifemyquit.com. If you have any questions, let's say that I went over something in this presentation and you just need some additional information, please email me at mrichardson@lickingcohealth.org. Thank you for your time today. What I'd like you to do is click on this link below and complete this evaluation form so that you get credit for your class, and we get credit for doing this presentation to you. Thank you very much.